Hey all, here OS Reviews. Today we're taking a quick look at the Anker Soundcore Sport X10. These are TWS wireless buds that are sports-oriented because they have this wing as part of its design that makes them more resistant to falling out even if you're performing vigorous activity, running and jogging movements. This is also relatively affordable, selling for under $80 despite packing in active noise cancellation and a companion app, plus this a little bit more unique design than what we typically see out of these wireless buds. And otherwise, they're IPX7, so they're going to be rainproof and light waterproof. It does have very strong bass as part of its design because it's more oriented for sports, getting you vigorous and energized. Battery life rated at 32 hours with the battery case combined. And for the buds themselves, on their own, they will get you 8 hours of continuous music listening. It comes in two colors, black and white. We have the white edition here, along with a quick wearing tip. So when you first wear these, they tell you to pop it in like this, and then the wing you can attach onto the back of your ear. These can control everything on the buds themselves using a physical button located on the edge that you can use to play pause music, raise the volume higher or lower by pressing once, as well as turn on active noise cancellation by pressing and holding for 2 seconds. Last but not least, you'll get some spare silicone tips to get a more snug fit along with a standard Type-C charging cable. Sports-oriented buds have actually been a little more niche. There are some options including the Power Beats that Apple have released a year or two back, and those were pretty large and bulky because it has to accommodate the extra wing onto the shape. So it's pretty cool how they've been able to integrate this into this folding design, rotate at 210 degrees when you need it, but it can also be compact when you are just folding it into the case. So this is a clever design. Now this white version actually has more of a slight pink hue to it in my opinion, but it does look pretty distinctive. The casing is made out of this translucent polycarbonate plastic. The back of your house is just a Type-C port for charging. It's matte, so it doesn't really attract fingerprints. And otherwise, it also has a pretty unique mechanism for opening up the case. There's actually a door, which if you press inwards, the entire lid here flips open like so with a pretty satisfying action. However, what's smart here is it's not a mechanical switch, but rather it's still using magnets, meaning that if you apply enough pressure, you can open the case yourself just by your hand. Really, this is just depressing that magnet located here for attaching things shut. When you press down, it moves the magnet back, and as a result, it loosens up that connection, and then it flips open. The shape of these are just a little bit more distinctive than your typical buds. They have the Soundcore logo with these wings, as aforementioned, that you can rotate up to 210 degrees. So when you're actually popping them in and wearing them, you just have to flick them up like this, pop them in and get a more secure lock, but then also fold them back down when not in use. But what it does mean though is that these wings are not actually detachable, so they're always going to be stuck onto the stem, but overall they work quite well. They're silicone, so they're super soft and comfortable, and they're also relatively lightweight despite the 8 hours of battery life. Aside from the Soundcore logo, which by the way is not touch sensitive, the controls here is a physical button located at the very top that you can press down on to control everything, and overall it's pretty tactile and responsive, and I think it makes sense because as a sports-oriented bud, maybe you're wearing gloves or your hands are a little sweaty, so this will get you more tactile confirmation, and because it's located at the top as opposed to in the middle, you're also not jamming these into your ears when you're pressing down, so it still feels comfortable as you're hitting this control in my testing so far. Now we do have a few microphones for picking up sound and ambient noise for that reduction. The back of your house is a pretty ergonomic fit that feels, again, also quite snug and comfortable. The wings here then just give room to that driver. All the mesh here is made out of metal, so it's also quite easy to clean, which is good because as sports buds, you're going to just be a little more rough on these than usual. Now perhaps the only corners or slight edges where they cut in terms of hardware would be these don't come with an auto play and pause sensor, but it's not really strictly needed. You can always just tap on the controls here, which are easy enough to do for controlling that music, as well as the case here doesn't support Qi charging. In terms of audio codecs, it is just the standard Bluetooth 5.2, giving you access to SBC and AAC. With that being said, they don't have something like LDAC or aptX built on in, which again is partially expected at a relatively budget price. Taking a closer look at the companion app first, here you'll be able to see how much battery percentage is left on the left and right sides, as well as start a few unique breathing modes, which are not super rich in terms of functionality, but it will play back this kind of relaxing nature sound, and when you are are starting the activity, it will just give you these visualizations, which it tells you to inhale and exhale with this guide, as well as music to relax and also to warm up. So there's a few different modes here, including a decompression mode, a custom mode, and all of this will just change the speed of the animations here. Inhale and hold your breath for X amount of seconds and exhale again. So you can tweak through some of those modes, which is a neat idea, but overall it's really just a software trick. Otherwise on here there's equalizers, which you can try out, including the default Soundcore EQ, which by itself I think already sounds excellent. It has pretty punchy bass, and everything here is already tuned to be very dynamic and rich and immersive. There's also a further bass boosted mode that you can even activate on top of the Soundcore signature sound, which just pumps things up to another level. Other ones you can find here include acoustic, bass reducing can also be tweaked per your liking, and they do make a susceptible difference on the audio. So if you are, again, a more discerning listener and you want to play around with these settings, it's great that you have the ability to try this depending on the genre and track that you're listening to. You can also try out a custom mode, by the way, in which you're able to further map your own EQ preferences by changing the sliders here for the frequency range and get to that level of granularity. One software trick though that you won't find on these is a custom hearing test, kind of like Sound ID, which some of their more flagship buds will offer. You can also turn off certain controls like pressing once if you think you're going to accidentally trigger it and get to that level of detail, which is appreciated. Finally, last but not least, you can also change the ANC effect by turning on that, as well as the audio transparency mode. Overall, the app here I think is pretty polished and does give you a lot of these controls. So let's talk about the audio quality next. And I have to say I have been very impressed with the Sport X10s. It's not too surprising because Soundcore has slowly developed an excellent reputation. They in fact do deliver a lot of bass, especially with that boosted mode. It comes in super strong. The impact is actually very much shocking as you're listening to drum beats. It definitely wakes you up, but at the same time, I didn't find it to be overpowering either. It's still quite precise. It doesn't randomly shake and make you uncomfortable. And more importantly, mids and trebles still packed, I think, plenty of detail. Even with singers' textures and vocals, it didn't sound too tinny or repressed despite the strong bass. So I think they have done an excellent job there. But of course, the emphasis is more on the mids and the bass. Now, connectivity-wise, I also found them to be quite stable. No real hints of drops or lag even when I'm watching back videos, although admittedly they don't have a dedicated low latency mode. So if you're doing things like gaming, I think that's one area where they can maybe improve on, but these are primarily meant for sports, when you're going to the gym, running and jogging outdoors, just listening to music and podcasts. I think they really do shine with no traces of any distortion or hissing in the background, which is good. And finally, when it comes to the active noise cancellation, I would also say they're pretty decent. It's not going to be quite rivaling the extent of some of the Bose and Sonys, but they already repress a good amount of sound. I would rate it around 80 to 85%. So lower frequency noises in particular, fans and engines do get largely repressed, and you're able to listen to music in more comfort. So that's more or less it as far as our hands-on review of these Soundcore Sport X10s. I have to say that I was, for the most part, impressed by the way that these perform, especially considering the price and the pretty clever rotatable wing design that they've built on in. Sound quality is excellent, especially if you love impact with bass, then these are going to be one of the top choices I feel that you can find right now. They may not be necessarily audiophile grade in terms of missing some of those aforementioned codecs, as well as a few modes in the app, but for the most part, if you're primarily listening to music, you want something with an extra rigidity to it, and it's not going to fall out, then I do think these are worth a closer look. They are thoughtfully designed and, again, very competitively priced. You can check out more details if you're interested in the links below. For now, that's been our video. Thanks for watching here at OS Reviews. That's been the Soundcore Sport X10.